Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbiville. Most every World War II veteran counts themselves lucky to have survived to tell their story when so many did not. Ray Akins' service came near the war's end, but included 82 days fighting in the Pacific's bloodiest battle, Okinawa, the battle that killed more than 12,000 Americans and left another 36,000 wounded. As a member of a special weapons unit in the 1st Marines Division, his was the third wave to storm the beach that April 1st, 1945. Okinawa was to be a main staging area for the ground assault on Japan, the assault that never happened because of the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Over the next 2 episodes of Veterans of the Valley, we'll hear not only some of Ray Akins' war stories from World War II, but some of his stories of a legendary 38-year high school football coaching career, one that produced a quarterback named Marty Akins, who went on to run Darrell Royal's wishbone attack at the University of Texas. And we'll talk about Ray Akins, the proud grandfather of another quarterback you may recognize, a fellow named Drew Brees. Please welcome Coach Ray Akins to Veterans of the Valley. Ray, it's more than an honor to meet you, to know you, and to have you on Veterans of the Valley. Let's talk about when you were in high school as a junior in Brady. That's when Pearl Harbor was attacked, December 7th, 1941. So you knew then that you were going to be in the military and you were going to be going to war eventually, right?
Absolutely. We knew that. And we wanted to do something, for our country. And about 10 of us from Brady, boys, about in February that year, decided that we wanted to go join up. And so we got our diplomas early.
Right.
And we went to San Antonio, and us 10, and there was about 100 boys that wanted to be in the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
And so they gave us quite a few tests, mental tests and physical tests, and thinking quick, making quick decisions. And I believe there was about 10 that they picked out of that 100.
Right.
And I happened to be one of those. And then we got to San Diego, California, and so I would say that when we got through with boot camp, there was about 3 of those 10 that were still left there. And I could tell a lot of stories that they don't do now to train, like they used to.
Right. When you went to San Diego, you were a teenager, and I think you said I read that your dad took you to the train station and he gave you some advice as he put you on the train. What was that?
He did, and I think it's good advice today. My dad and mother never smoked or drank or anything like that, and he didn't. Naturally, we had been grown up that way, and so we rode a horseback in, really. And he took my horse back home, but he said, "Son, now when you get on that train, they're going to say, 'Have a smoke, boy,' or buddy, have a drink." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Now, when you have a question that you don't know about," he said, "just say, 'What would my mother and daddy say?' And that's your answer right there." And sure enough, when I got on the train, have a smoke or have a drink. And I think a lot of young people, they think they kind of pressured into it. But, I told those young men that was doing that, I said, "Look, I respect your choices and what you want to do. You respect mine.
Right.
And if you don't respect mine, then I'm not going to cooperate at all with you."
And you've still had neither, right?
I never smoked a cigarette in my life, and you could put all the other stuff in one beer can.
Exactly. You got away from home and you got a quick taste of the Marines, a pretty rough drill instructor, I understand.
Yes, I sure did. I'll tell you this, that I even, we were out on the parade ground, and I was thinking about home. Mm-hmm. And we were coming in on the parade ground after being out in the boondocks, and he hollered up there. You didn't have a name, you had a number.
Right.
And I believe my number was 64. And I always, when they'd call out a number, I'd say, "Oh man, I hope he hears it." But that day I didn't hear mine, and first thing I know, I'm jerked out of that line and knocked down on thrown down on the ground and on the pavement. And, they just tell you they're going to kick your brains out.
Right.
And so I believed them. And I tell you what, I couldn't even sleep at night hardly. You know, I mean, I'd wake up at night wondering where I was, you know, if everything was okay. But we'd go out at sometime they'd get us up at 3 o'clock in the morning and take us out in, I guess you'd say, the bay. The water was about 3 feet deep or 2.5, and we'd have our full pack, and you'd had to pick up your knees just like you did in football, you know, we'd run the tires, and because you couldn't shove the water. So and that was just one of our trainings. I guess one of the things that was probably the most scariest was when we fought with bayonets. You know, we took everything, every segment, and so we were fighting with bayonets and hand-to-hand combat, and after about the third or fourth day, they said it was about 112 degrees too out there. They said, okay, now we take those covers off of those bayonets, and boy, did they shine, and sharp as razors. And there's a lot of guys got hurt.
Right.
But it was. Some people think, well, that's not good, but you know, I mean, you may hurt your buddy, or you know, you're fighting for your life too, and he is. So when you get over there, but here's the way I look at it. If you're going to play football, you got to practice tackling and blocking. And if you're going to fight for your life, you got to go through the real stuff.
Right.
And so that's there was a number of things, but that's just one.
You were part of the 1st Marine Division that got a little extra training because you were headed to Okinawa for the final invasion of the war. And like we said in the beginning, this was supposed to be the staging area for the assault in Japan. Let's go ahead and get there to Okinawa. A lot of the Marines had been sent to Iwo Jima for that final stand at Iwo Jima, but you were sent to Okinawa. Talk about some of your thoughts about where you were going and your role in the battle.
Well, let me say just a few words about before we went, you know, there.
Okay.
We did our training a couple of 2 or 3 places, but before we did for that, we went to Guadalcanal to actually take all of the ammunition and everything there and try to let those Japanese know that the war was over, and they were still, you know, sniping, and we were sniping, and then we went, but we had an island there called Pavuvu Island.
Right.
Pavuvu. I don't know how many people had ever heard of it. And it had one named White Beach. It's close to Midway, and that's where we trained for about 2 or 3, I'd say 2 months. And because we were amphibious, so we were landing and you know, and out in the water and different things like that. But then we spent 61 days on the troop ship, and you could just look out and see these ships every morning, and you know, and that, and then battle wagons, you know, cruisers, everything. But we carried about 6,000 men on one troop ship. And so when we got, I was just hoping I'd live to be 20, you know. And but before we got there, of course, we didn't know all of what was going on. Nobody did, but the higher ups did. And so the 2nd Marine Division actually landed on the south end of Okinawa. And that was to pull as much of their troops and their guns that way. And I was in the 1st Marine Division, so I mean, you know, so we, the 1st and the 6th Marine Division, we went around into the China Sea, and we hit about where the middle of Okinawa was at the Yantan airfield. And we got off of the ship out there, the troop ship, probably 10 miles or 15, 20 miles out. And we were on these little LSVP, you know, and landing craft vehicle personnel. And so probably about 10 or 15 Marines on each one. And these coxsmen, it was, they need to get you up where water wasn't over your head, so when you got out of the boat, you know, before you hit the beach. So we hit that, and in 3 days we cut Okinawa in two, and the 10th Army went south, and we went north. Right. And about 2 weeks we secured the north, because most of their big guns and everything had been pulled south with our 2nd Marine Division landing there.
Right.
And after they landed, they actually landed there, and then they pulled back off of there, but we had them trapped down there.
And after you secured the north, then you headed back down south, and that was really one of the first times, or one of the significant times, that you really witnessed the horror of war, I know, because of what you saw when you headed back south. Talk about that.
Well, of course, you know, it'd been a lot of big bombs dropped, and there'd been a lot of those big 16-inch shells, you know, laid in there. But there was, I really felt sorry for our troops, because you couldn't take a step, 3 or 4 steps in any direction without stepping on a dead Jap or a dead soldier.
Right.
And so, you know, we actually then joined up with the 10th Army and at the Yontana Airfield and started pushing south. And that's what took a lot of time, because they were real fortified.
Right.
You know, they had, big guns that they'd bring out at night. And, well, I was on a flamethrower quite a bit, and, you know, you strap on your back. And I wasn't so much worried about getting hit myself or shot as I was that napalm getting hit, you know, I mean, there, because you was a goner.
Right.
And I've actually seen those big flamethrowers on those tanks shoot out, and actually just, if you take a matchstick and you know, you burn it down, and I didn't realize that there was so much liquid or in a person, a human being, or, you know, that they would just melt, you know, on and just still be just a skeleton there.
Right. Talk about what you saw as far as the Japanese and their method of doing battle was obviously very unique. They were fight to the death attitude, and their method of hiding themselves.
It was unbelievable. They could hide for 6 or 7 days, and they really were trained to, and they believed in that they were going to be, you know, that was the rising sun. You know, that was theirs, that they would be actually doing a great service, and as far as their religious is concerned, they believed that would be the greatest thing they ever did.
Right.
And but they would hide and under things, and they would wait until they really had a chance to get 2 or 3 of you if they could.
Right. But they would actually hide in graves and
they hide.
Talk about that incident.
They had these big tombs that they buried their dead in, and they were everywhere.
Right.
In the side of these mountains or hills, and they were probably about 4 feet thick, and with concrete and steel on the tops. But we had to actually get these Japs out of there, because they had big walls running on the side, and then they had these here big blocks about a 2 by 2 feet by 2 feet, and they would be cemented in there. But whenever the Japanese started taking those out and taking the bones out of there and getting in there and using that as a cover, so we had to get them. You know, we had to get them out of there.
Right.
And I think you saw the other day on mine, I told you it was my turn to go in one of those one time, and I got down there real close to it, and I could see that it had been knocked out, and there was about a half or 2, maybe 3/4 of an inch across the top. And then I saw these eyes, you know, shining right at me, and I figured I was a goner.
Yes, sir.
Because, you know, they're going to kick it over and start, you know, getting after you. But we had the other boy that besides, as 3 of us that made it the originals all the way through. But this John Carey from Georgia was a boy that he wasn't afraid of the devil himself either. And he said, I started crawling and rolling and, you know, getting out of there, because I figured he was going to mow me down. And he laughed. He said, hey, let me take care of this little chore. So he went down there, and luckily they were out of ammunition, or he probably wouldn't have made it back either.
Right.
But he went in there, and he got those 3, if I remember right, there was 3 Japanese soldiers in there, and we got them out. And contrary to the way they do today, there was no way we could take prisoners there. Right. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, you got to take prisoners. What are you going to do with them? You had nothing. There's no place nobody to take them or keep them or whatever. So we just had to. They did us the same way. They just destroyed them right there.
Exactly.
And that's that was really, that was just day after day. Where you live from 1 minute to the next, not from 1 hour to the next, trying to survive. And on that particular time going north, many of our young men got killed by our own people for mistakes.
Right.
And that's why I think it helped me in my coaching when I got out. This mistakes will beat you.
Right.
And so we were out one time there, and our own planes come down and strafed us. And I don't see how in the world they kept killing every one of us, because you could see the shells hitting the ground, and we had nothing to get, no ditch to get in, or no trees to get behind or anything. And it was, you know, really scary, but luckily I didn't get hit, but a lot of them did. And but that's just one instance that, you know, those big guns sitting out there 30 miles away, those big 16-inch guns, when they come over you and go shoo, 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 boom, and they're trying to get them just over the front lines, maybe 50 yards or 100 yards, something like that. But if somebody back there on that ship didn't put the right amount of TNT behind it, or they didn't have exactly the right elevation, and all the communication had to be right, they might have wiped out, and in some instances it did wipe out a lot of people or a lot of our men.
Right. Let's look at some photographs right now from your service time. We've got about a half a dozen pictures here, and here's the first one. There's a good-looking Marine right there. About how old were you then? Was that when you first went in, or?
That's when I first, right after I got in, and right out of boot camp.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and yes, I didn't. And that is another one about the same way.
With some of the medals surrounding that picture, this is actually from a larger picture that you have hanging in your home that I believe your son Marty put together, sort of a collage of your World War II memorabilia. So talk about
and
that.
I also was a sniper, but we trained on every weapon that the Marine Corps had, so that we could fill in Able Company, Baker Company, and Charlie Company. That's what they call them in the 1st Marine Regiment. And if they got, let's say they got 4 flamethrowers, that's what happened right off the bat. 4 flamethrowers got killed. So they say Akins, Smith, Jones, and whatever, you know, be ready to move out in 5 minutes. We take their place.
Right.
And so the first time we were up on the front line, we stayed up there, I believe it was about 21 days, something like that. You'd never change clothes. You was in the mud and everything and nothing. And if you can imagine having a cast on, you know, how it does your flesh. And so then they fix these showers back behind back behind the lines, maybe, you know, a few hundred yards. And you cut your stuff off, your leggings and all that, you cut it off, and you took these showers, but, you know, your flesh was pretty, I still have a little problem with that.
Right.
You know, I mean, on you.
Right.
But it was, then about 1 or 2 days they'd issue your new clothes, new leggings, new shoes and everything. You go back up again.
Yeah, do it again.
You're right up on the front.
Here's another picture with
Now that gun right there is
guns
a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun. We knocked out tanks with that. We knocked the chains off of them. And we had some really, it's a high-powered, gun. Also, we had canister we could shoot in that. And the canister in that gun was, it was like a shotgun.
Right.
And big, pellets. And it would mow down when these Japanese have those banzai charges. They just try to overrun you, and sometimes did. But we tried to, we cut down a lot of them with that.
Okay.
That is my buddy Hugh Tao on our left. That's me on the right. And we had, this is once when we went back, like I told you, back behind the lines, we played around a little bit. Hugh Tao was a Sunday school teacher from Seabury, Kentucky. And he was really a fine man. He's about 6 or 7 years older than I was. He was in the Aleutian Islands, and he and I met up on Turbiville Island when we was training in the South Pacific. And so we became very good friends, and even after we got home, after we got married, we went to see each other. I'd go see him one year, he'd come see me the next year.
Wonderful. This is a photograph of a group of you with a a memorabilia from the war, a Japanese flag, and you're the one standing behind the flag, we believe, right?
Yes,
in that picture. How do you remember that you came? Obviously, that was from either a Japanese soldier that you all killed or captured, I guess, right?
Yes, I have a sword that's off one of their officers, and my son Marty's got that now.
Right.
And I gave it to him, and I had 3 guns that we took off of, or killed the Japanese, right. And I got them, and I know Marty's got one of them now, and it was a 25 caliber. That's what they were that we took. Also, I killed another officer that had a camera.
Right.
And so I took a lot of pictures with it, but didn't know if they would be any good. When I got back to the States, did, and probably about 100 pictures, and a lot of those was in China where I took them.
Right.
And so after we left Okinawa, after they dropped the bombs, so I took a lot of good pictures there, and there's a lot of gruesome things in China that the way they did there, you had to belong to something. You had to have that you had a boss or a company that you worked for.
Right.
And if you were kind of like our stray dogs and stray cats or whatever, if you wasn't documented and didn't have that, they rounded you up.
Right.
If nobody came to claim you, they would cut your heads off. And we went to one of those places. I even took pictures of it. Every week they had if nobody took care of it, they had a compound, and they had them down on their knees and their hands behind their back, and they tied them, and it just went, they used a big machete, and I didn't realize that you could cut a person's head off, or, at the neck, so easy. But those machetes, I guess, that guillotine they used to have, something like that. But this was pretty simple. But I can tell you one thing, you better be documented. And, you could buy a girl for $3, and a boy cost you about $21.
Wow. This, what you're talking about now, is during the
that's
occupation time.
China,
right?
Yeah,
we're gonna talk about that. One of the hardest duties that you had in Okinawa is what you called outpost duty, and it was during the nighttime. Talk about that, and there was an incident involving that when you were in outpost duty. To what extent you want to talk about that also, but obviously that was one of the hardest and most dangerous duties that you had. We have a few minutes. Talk about that.
Okay, actually, what probably the most dangerous thing was that you had to go out there, pick out 6 men, and each company would, but you'd send them out in front of the front lines. And actually, we had to get out there just about dusk and get situated, and so that when the Japs then started to come in, we'd open fire, and then our front lines would throw up flares, and they could see, and that helped them. We kind of, actually what it was is warning them before they got to them.
Right.
And so usually what the hardest part was, if you didn't get killed out there, is getting back. Because if you went back at night, your own men's going to kill you. If you go in daytime, the Japanese snipers are going to get you.
Right.
So, and this happened to a lot of young men.
Right.
And but this one night, we were having actually it was I was on that 37 millimeter gun that you saw there a while ago, and we had 100% alert. I wasn't out on the outpost that night, but I was behind the right wheel of that gun, and we dug deep, our foxholes, one on each side, and then there was 2. My buddy Hugh there was underneath there was 2 men underneath that gun on, where we had a tarp over it to kind of keep it from getting wet. So when we started firing it.
Right.
And so that night, probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, and there was a little ridge about maybe 15 feet there in front of us, and we always tried to get behind a ridge, and where the line would go, and so about that time, this man come over that, and I thought he was a Jap. That's what he looked like, and he was kind of bent down, and he just came over that ridge and coming right straight towards me. And so I shot him.
Right.
And I know that, you know, and so he fell in my foxhole with me. And I thought he was a Jap, see, all the time. And I knew that if that Jap wasn't killed or wasn't dead, that he would actually, they always strapped stuff, you know, explosives around them, and they had grenades and everything on them. But he was going to probably blow us both up, or, you know, me up. And but everything sat real still, and he never did move, and I didn't move. And so I know my buddy Hugh was right there within 2 feet of me. He thought he wasn't sure whether I was killed or whether the Jap was still alive or what, because if he was, he'd be killing them too. So, but the next morning, actually about daylight, I realized that here was a parka, you know, one of our parkas on this man, and he was one of our Marines that had been sent out. He was on one of them outposts down from another company, and he'd been trying to get back. I knew this because they told me about it. That he had been lost, but he was trying to get back to his outfit. But you know, he was always moving, you know, the line and everything. The line's going to be moving forward, right, or that. And but anyway, he was. It really hurt me. And the colonel, they came up and got me, took me back, and the colonel talked to me, and he wanted to know how it was affecting me, and if I thought I could continue to be, you know, and I certainly didn't want to pull back off the line because you might be put anywhere then.
Right.
So I wanted to stay with my outfit, and I told him I was fine. There wasn't anything I could do but what I did.
Exactly.
But this happened so many times, and it's either kill or be killed. That was what they put in our heads from the word go.
Right.
Kill or be killed, and a one-way ticket. You didn't worry about coming back.
Indeed. You were on the line, that outpost line, for 27 straight days, never took a shower. You were in battle for the 81 days of the Battle of Okinawa. And you said that when you went in, you weighed 202 pounds, and when you came out, you weighed 146. We're out of time for this show. Next week, we're going to talk about after the truce was signed. But the war still kept going on, right, in occupation duty. And we're going to talk about some football next week. Thank you for being with us.
That'd be great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. There is obviously more to tell of this remarkable career. The occupation of China when the war was over, but the fighting didn't really stop. And next week, we'll talk some football. So please join Coach Ray Akins and me next week on Veterans of the Valley. Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbiville. Last week we introduced you to Coach Ray Akins, who long before he coached a down of football was involved in far more serious battles, like World War II's Battle of Okinawa, known as Operation Iceberg, near war's end in the Pacific Theater. Ray Akins told of the death and other horrors of war that he witnessed. After the bomb was dropped and the Japanese surrendered aboard the USS Missouri in August of 1945, the occupation began, and Ray Akins' unit was sent to China, where the fighting continued and some politics got in the way too. And then there's 38 years coaching high school football in Texas, the last 23 for the Gregory Portland Wildcats, where he coached his son Marty, who would lead Darrell Royal's Longhorns in the mid-'70s. And today we will save plenty of time for Ray to brag about his grandchildren and his grandson, Drew Brees, quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. Welcome, Coach Ray Akins, back to Veterans of the Valley. Ray, it's a pleasure to have you back again. We want to continue with your service in World War II. After the bombs were dropped in August of 1945, despite the heavy casualties that your unit took, you were assigned to occupational duty in China. I want you to talk about that, what that involved. I know that you couldn't go ashore because of the mine, so you actually had to offload the fishing boats, right, to get on shore to China.
The Chinese, they call them Chinese junkies, and they haul coal in there because there was some coal in the bottom when we got in there. Right. Probably about 30 or 40 of us in one of those boats, and it was a little town called Tsingtao, right on the border of China. Tsingtao and Qingwangtao, and that's another one. But we kind of rendezvoused there, and then we got on a train, and it was kind of like a military train, really. The tracks wasn't any wider than 3 feet, and but anyway, it was like a boxcar.
Right. And
you could see out, and so they filled up the boxcars with us, and we traveled several hours, and then we got to Tientsin, China. And Tientsin, China at that time was about 3 million population.
Wow.
And we were sent there to tell the Japanese or get them to understand that the war was over, because they didn't have any way of knowing the war was over.
Right.
And and also to repatriate the Japs back to Sasebo, Japan. So when we got there, of course, I can remember 2 or 3 instances, but one night we were in this school there in China and in Tientsin, and we heard these here clicking them, down those Japanese had them boots on, and they were coming down the hallway, and we all slid in this room because we knew they might open fire on us any time. And they did, and of course we had some more Marines killed there and some more Japanese killed there. But the old British barracks is where we had our compound, and it had about 12 foot high, and it was about, I'd say, 2.5 feet thick, with big high rocks up there, and then that wire on the top, and big iron gates at the opening. But I spent probably about 4 to 5 months there.
Right.
And so while we were there, of course, there's some of the things that's too hard to tell. I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But anyway, I like to tell this story because I didn't have it before. Hugh Tao and I decided that we wanted to go to church. And we hadn't been out of the compound much, but you had to be careful because these rickshaw men sometimes worked for some of these people that wanted to rob you. And they would take you because you didn't know how to get back. Maybe 2 miles down into Tientsin. And they had different compounds, they called them, the British, the British and the White Russian and every different nationality, the Indians and everything. I mean, that they had different compounds for each one, and you could tell where each one of them, lived because they had different lawns, different houses, and everything like that.
Right.
But we got down there, and we went to that church, and it was huge, and so it stayed in my mind ever since. Anyway, we went in there. Of course, they had all different languages, but they sang songs, but they all in different languages, but they all had the same tune. And we were sitting behind these 2 good-looking girls, about halfway up there, and we knew they couldn't understand us, but in the end, I'll tell you about that. But anyway, up here on this stage, they had 3. I wondered how they were going to preach to everybody. How they were going to talk. So they had these 3 pretty good-sized houses. I'd say about 8 by 10s. And so they opened up this first house, and they didn't find Jesus anywhere, the pictures or nothing, or the Bible. And they went back and they tore the house all the way down to show everybody in the audience, probably about, I imagine there's 2,000 people there. And so they found Jesus, dusty and all that, the Bible and everything, in the very back of the house. So the next house, they showed where these people kept Jesus in their hearts. And then they got the next one and they found it about middle ways. So, they were kind of iffy, but they had it. And then the third house, they found him right at when he opened the front door, there in that house, there was the Bible and there was a picture of Jesus and everything. So what their theme was is, where do you keep Jesus in your heart,
right?
Or in your house,
right?
And so we walked outside, and these two girls that were sitting in front of us, and I corresponded with them a little bit after that. They were from India, and I guarantee you their daddy must have been 7 foot tall. And they're those that wears those all that stuff around their head and everywhere. But he shook hands with me, and his old hand was twice as big as mine. And but anyway, these girls could speak English, and so could their parents.
Right.
But anyway, it kind of made us feel like we'd been talking about all this stuff, and they've been listening to it. But that was it. And then when we got back, and then I'll skip on down it, when we kind of to help explain why we had kill or be killed one-way ticket, why that was good. Well, Hugh Tao, after about 4 months there, he came and told me, he said, Ray, I'm about ready I got my orders to be shipped back home, back to the States. And I thought, he said, do you have yours? I said, no. And but I knew he had been in longer than I had. I told you he was in the Aleutian Islands before he met up with me. And but during that 2 weeks, then about 2 weeks later, I got mine. But during that 2 weeks, I almost cracked up. You're worrying about, because we're still getting guys killed, and still, things were happening, and you kind of tiptoed. You didn't really, you're always holding back, so to speak. And then I kind of put that, after I started coaching, I really realized that if you're a player, if you're a football player and you're worried about getting hurt, you ain't worth a damn. And if you're a soldier or a fighter, and you're worried about getting killed, in a war, you're not much soldier.
Right.
And so it really dawned on me then that's what it did right at the end. And so I really I think being in the Marines was a great lesson for me.
And we're going to talk about how it influenced you in your football coaching. I talked in the intro about how politics got in the way a little bit, and what I was referring to is that you had told me about how things got a little bit testy with the Russians during this occupation, because the Russians, who of course were our allies during World War II, they were there. U.S. soldiers were there to repatriate the Japanese and to send them back home. The Russians were not necessarily there for the same reason. When they would find a Japanese, a lot of times they would send them to Siberia, I guess, to be laborers for the Russians. And so you and the Russians were sort of on opposite sides of what to do with these Japanese, and it got a little testy there at times.
Absolutely.
Right?
I'd like to tell one more story that probably, while this was going on, the Russians wanted those Japanese, but there was another big compound. And we had taken when we take these Japs in, when you find them and get them, we would take their guns away from them. And we had a pile of guns that was up 12 feet high, in this compound. And we had these Japanese in that compound. And we would take them in these big old LSTs, that the ramps would drop down. We'd take them, that's where we'd take them in. But the Russians, they started taking everybody that had, if they had both arms and both legs, they took them into Siberia to work, and until they died.
Right.
And but this, what happened was is up in Peking, and now they call it Beijing, but Peking then, and our officers, we clashed with, pretty much clashed some with the Russians, because the Russians they wouldn't let us, do what we went there to do, and that's repatriate the Japs back to Japan.
Right.
And so they really, and by and large, but they broke what happened one night, they bombed this, or blasted this compound, and so we had to let the Japanese have their guns back.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took us out in a truck. Can you mind you there? I told you 3 million population, be like kind of like Houston, and they took us out and dropped us off with 2 Japanese and 1 Marine, about ever, you know, and gave our guns back. Here we are with the people we've been fighting
against.
You're
standing shoulder to shoulder.
Now
with them.
they're with us, more or less fighting against the other to try, you know,
Right.
the Russians. I knew, and when I got back, I told everybody that Russia is who we're going to have problems with, you know. And one day, I'm saying it right now, our problems are going to be with China or Russia.
Right.
Or
And
both.
So you foresaw the Cold War even back
Yeah.
then, and that must have been strange. We want to get on to football, and you returned to the U.S. You were discharged. You enrolled at Southwest Texas in San Marcos. That's where you met Virginia. You played football. You told me one story. You played with a lot of guys who had returned from the war.
Yes.
And you were playing against some teams of kids that were just coming out of high school who were just 18-year-old kids, and it was pretty much no contest, right?
That's right. Well, I felt really sorry in a way because during my time there, see, a lot of these men that was in the war, and surprisingly, there was a lot of Marines there. Of course, our coaches, some of them, you know, we had 5 coaches that came back, had been in the war, and one of them was really, probably everybody would remember him as Milton Jowers. And he was a tough, and he actually stayed in the Bobcat Hall with us, you know, where the athletes stayed.
Right.
He lived there. But it was, actually, I went there, when I got home from San Diego, California, and got back home, within a week, my coaches had rounded me up. And one of them named Bob Short, which went to Southwest Texas, he wanted me to go down, and I had grown quite a bit. I didn't weigh but about 140 pounds in high school, but
Right.
now I weighed 200. So they wanted me to go down there and see if I could get a scholarship. So I was working for the REA. I got a job at the REA there, and that's when they first started it, working for 40 cents an hour.
Right.
And but anyway, I went down and I worked out. There was only 33 boys got scholarships. We had to do jobs, you know, around the school, sweeping out and mopping up, you know, restroom and everything. But anyway, that's my junior year. I met Virginia,
Right.
but
Right.
I got a scholarship in football and track, which
Oh.
was good.
I want to get you on the coaching road. Your first coaching job was just down the road from Bryan College Station in Rosebud as an assistant coach, right?
That's right.
And then sort of take us through just where were your stops after Rosebud? I know you were at Lomita, you were at Goldthwaite, Freer. Where else before you got to Gregory Portland? What's the order of things here?
Where I went was just, I was at my first job was at Rosebud,
Right.
as assistant coach,
Right.
in 1950.
Okay.
And then in 1951, I went to Lomita as head coach.
Head coach.
That's
for
the place.
$2,700 a year.
That's right.
Plus $300 for coaching.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, then we played Goldthwaite, which had been, UIL had been suspended or kicked out of the UIL for a while
Yep.
before I ever got there, but they didn't have any equipment or anything. And but I decided that if I wanted to find out for sure if I could, you know, if I was in the right profession.
Right.
So I went to Goldthwaite, and the coaching school that year, they said, "Oh, Akins, why would you want to go to a coach's graveyard?" And I told them, I said, you know, I wanted to find out if I can really build a program. So we went there, and we stayed there for 3 years, and we did pretty well. We only got beat the second 2 years I was there, 3. We actually did go to the state in the girls. I coached everything, and I was so we went to the state in girls basketball.
You even
But-
toted the cheerleaders around, right?
Yeah, but actually, a lot of the kids today wouldn't know that. But you know, we had leather headgears in high school.
Right.
You could almost fold them up and put in your hip pocket, kind of like a pair of gloves. And now they got all this thing. You know, it's really changed.
And when you got tackled, you fell on grass burrs, right?
Yeah, they used our
Yeah.
field in the summer as a rodeo ground. I tell you, it was solid grass burr. But we had this big rolling machine they fixed, and we tied tow sacks
Right.
or burlap bags on it, and would pull that, and them grass birds, you know, we'd catch all them grass birds get in there,
Right.
and then we'd cut it off and put them in a pile there and burn them.
Right.
And then we did that and got a lot of the grass birds out.
Right.
But I felt sorry. Those old boys had places on them. But go back to Goathwaite, we were there, and actually they won the state championship right after I left, and we'd still be there
Right.
if they could have paid anything.
Right.
But I knew if I stayed in that profession, because by now we had not only Virginia, we had 3 children.
Right.
And
Right.
we had Mina and Laura Sue and Marty.
Right.
And so we either had to go north or south to get a little more money.
Right.
So we went to Tidehaven,
Uh-huh.
which is down close to Bay City, between Bay City and Palacios.
Right. And then.
And we stayed there, and then we went to Freer
Uh-huh.
in 1960.
Right.
Stayed there 5 years, and we
Right.
only lost 1 district game in 5 years there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Gregory Portland.
Right.
And we stayed there 23 years, and we thought, well, you know, we'll go there, because they didn't have anything either. So I went to 2 schools where they had never won anything to speak of.
Right. Right.
And so I was real happy that we went there, because my superintendent, Mr. W.C. Andrews, which I owe a lot because he gave me the chance to come and be there, and he enjoyed going and making arrangements for these playoff games.
Right. Right.
We had a great time.
At Gregory Portland, 23 years there, 3A state finals in 1971. You won 302 games, I think, in your entire coaching career.
That's right.
200 and something of those at Gregory Portland. And one of your quarterbacks in those 23 years was your son, Marty.
That's
You
right.
had to be very proud to have coached your son, because he went on to a great college career at the University of Texas.
You know, Virginia and I are so proud of him, and we're proud of all of our children. But
Sure, of course.
He, you know, Marty was, you know, he grew up, he was little and small, but he developed and he started working, and he was a kid that he wanted to do. You had to be really careful. In fact, he taught me a lot in my coaching, because I saw that you know, a lot of coaches think they have to do something or tell a kid something, or they're not doing their job. Well, I found out, don't tell a kid anything unless you know for a fact it's going to help him. Because Marty was the type of kid, and we'll just take the shot put, for instance, and if you told him anything, you know, I mean, he was already putting the shot out there 60 feet, you know, and he won the relays in Austin
Right.
one year. We went to the Astrodome track meets, and we went to big track meets.
Sure.
And so he was a good shot putter and a good discus thrower, and he was a good football player, and he was a pretty good basketball player, and you know, he actually was a real good golfer.
Yeah.
And but I told him, I said, you haven't got time for that, son. You got to play football. But he would, you know, it's not, you know,
Right.
sometimes a dad and his son, you know, doesn't work out. But Marty he was good enough, and I kind of put the squeeze on him, and the parents from the other boys and the boys rallied around Marty, and wanted, you know, they were telling me, hey, put Marty in, you know, whenever I didn't have him in.
He finished at Texas in 1975, the year before Coach Royal retired, and he was really, I guess, Texas's last great wishbone quarterback, an All-American quarterback in the wishbone offense, which was
Yeah.
tough to do, to become an All-American. So I know that you were very proud of that. You spoke of your other children.
Yes, we have one right now. It's in med school,
Right.
And his second year, and that's Ryan Riahi. That's our youngest daughter's boy.
Right.
He's probably 6'3" or 4", and he's built like old Schwarzenegger.
Right.
He's very, very well. And then we have our son Marty's got the 2 girls, Angela and Tara.
Right.
And then our other Mina, our oldest daughter, had two boys, and one of them is Drew Brees, and the other is Reed Brees. And Reed played in the College World Series. He got a scholarship at Baylor in baseball. He played in the College World Series his senior year in Omaha, and so we're real proud of our kids, and they've all done well.
Indeed. Mina, you and Virginia tragically, and Drew lost her in August of 2009, just recently. But obviously, your grandson, Drew Brees, went to Westlake High School in Austin, won a state championship there his senior year. They went 16-0, a perfect season, and didn't get recruited by Texas or Texas A&M. And I'm sure that both of the head coaches at the time, Coach Makovic and Coach Slocum, were sorry about that, but he went on to Purdue, and now he's the quarterback of the New Orleans Saints. Talk about, obviously, how proud you are of the success that he's had, not only on the field with the New Orleans Saints, but the things he's done off the field with his foundation, helping the recovery effort in New Orleans. I know you're very proud of this young man.
Yes, he was actually started this when he was still in Purdue.
Right.
And he's got a street named after him in Purdue, Brees Way, while he was still there, which was great.
Right.
And but the thing that Virginia and I are most proud of our kids for is their generosity and helpfulness to others. Drew, he has this one where he has a dream, thing, and so these little kids that's handicapped or can't do much, they've sent in, and said they wanted to go fishing with him.
Right.
So he'd take them. That was their dream. They wanted to go fishing, so he'd take them fishing. But to end up, we were on the elevator going up into the Superdome to one of the games. I believe it was Green Bay,
right.
and these three nuns were on the elevator.
Right.
And so they were talking about Drew, and I told him, I said, I'm the grandfather, and this is their grandmother. So they said, you know what? We don't know anything about football, but we know one thing. We're so proud of Drew for what he does for this, for the community of New Orleans.
Right. We're running some pictures here as you talk, and we can look at those from your football career. That first one was you at Gregory Portland, coaching Marty Akins, your son. This was signing day when Marty signed with the University of Texas. That was back in the day when the head coach could actually be in the picture. And there's Marty with a picture that was signed by Coach Royal. Now we can slow down. Tell us about this picture was taken when Marty was, I guess, inducted into the Hall of Honor at Texas. Is that right?
Yes. Tommy Ingram's is on his right, and he's about 6'7". He was with tight end when Marty there, and also his roommate. And yes, Marty got the Hall of Honor, University of Texas Hall of Honor award that night. And so, Coach Royal there between Marty and I. And, he's always been, a good friend of all of our family.
Indeed. Let's move on. Now, this picture was just taken recently at Coach Royal's home. Is that right?
That's right. Coach Royal doesn't live too far from where Marty does now in Austin, out on that Bee Cave Road, going out north or of Austin.
Right.
And so Marty had been telling me that he'd been taking Coach Royal to, out to the golf courses, and they would ride around in golf carts. Coach Royal was always interested in golf.
Oh, sure.
And Marty is a good golfer, and he, they have a lot in common there. And then of course he played for Coach Royal, and we went over to his house and talked to he and his wife, and Marty's actually taking him out to his ranch.
Yeah.
And right around Cherokee.
Let's move on to now. I want to mention this. Just this fall, not too long ago, September 25th, 2009, as that shows. This is from the program at Gregory Portland, where their football stadium was renamed Ray Akins Wildcat Stadium. And you must have been very, very proud of that, because just about all of your family was able to be there for that, right?
I'm proud of that for my whole family. I think that if it hadn't been for the whole family, and Virginia in particular,
right.
And of course Marty, all the children, we supported each other, and we needed each other.
Right.
And it turned out, I thought it was
right.
great. And this is the whole family. This is our family except for Tara
right.
and her husband. And she's since that, she's had a great granddaughter.
Right. Now these are two pictures that I put together. I thought these were great pictures of you and your grandson, Drew Brees. And he was, I think you told us that this was on a Friday night. He actually had a game in Buffalo.
Buffalo Bills, they played.
2 days later,
yeah.
on Sunday. But they were able to fly him down to Corpus Christi, get in the car, come out to the stadium to be with you that night. And then they flew him back to catch the team plane the next day to go to Buffalo and then beat Buffalo on Sunday.
Right.
That was a heck of a trip for him, but I knew he was
I
glad
was so
to be
glad
there.
they won the game because I didn't want us to
You didn't want to be blamed for that. There's you in the middle, and with Drew on the left as we're looking at the picture, and his uncle, Marty Akins, on the right. Now here's a official photograph of your grandson, autographed to you.
Yes. Drew, he's given us a football. When he went this past year, he had the Pro Bowl.
Right.
He had all of his team they won it. They won. So but he had all of his team to sign the football, and you probably saw it there on the dresser. And he put it in a case and sent it to us and everything.
This is you in Virginia.
Yeah.
It's a marvelous picture, and you all have been married
this lady here
60 years.
Is absolutely a saint. She helps everybody. She never stops working. Of course, that's the German in her.
Right.
Her name was Schultz.
Exactly.
And I always said I was going to marry a Swede or a German or a Bohemian.
And the reason that you all are in the Brazos Valley now, as a matter of fact, is because she is from New Baden.
That's right.
And so that's why you all are here right now.
Most of my family had passed away, or my parents
Right.
and everything, and I had not many relatives still left around Brady.
Right.
So, we bought a piece of land there while we were coaching at Freer, and that's where we are today. We built us a nice log house, and it's really, for 21 years, we've been there now.
Indeed. We're out of time. We could talk forever and ever, but we're out of time. But thank you for your service, and thank you very much for being here, Coach Akins. Ray and Virginia Akins met at Southwest Texas State after the war, and they have been married more than 60 years now. Her family, like we said, is from New Baden, and it's near there in Robertson County where they are retired on their ranch. We salute Coach Ray Akins for not only his service on the battlefield in World War II, but for his passion of teaching young men life lessons of winning and losing that can only come from the battlefields of Texas high school football. For Coach Ray Akins, I'm Tom Turbiville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.
Tom, you did us.